Hi everyone, welcome to the CEO Speaker Series. I'm Karim Abouelnaga, the CEO and founder of It Factor, your host. And today we are joined by Karim Abouelnaga, and he's the founder and CEO of Practice, an education company dedicated to closing the opportunity gap for low-income students through high-dosage tutoring, responsive curricula, and technology solutions. He founded their organization in his Cornell University dorm room at age 18 and has since led it to support nearly 200,000 students nationwide. A first-generation American raised in Queens, New York, Karim earned a bachelor's degree from Cornell University School of Hotel Administration and a master's in education policy from Columbia University. He's a TED Fellow, Echoing Green Fellow, and was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 lists in education. This series is all about asking leaders what they wish they knew when they were in college. So let's dive right in. So Karim, I want to first ask you, let's start with your path from student to CEO. Tell us a little bit about your path from maybe your first job, major career decisions, and leadership milestones throughout your journey.
Well, excited to be here with you, Kaden, and really just to share some life experience to the extent that it'd be helpful to the audience. My first job, so the first thing that came to mind when you said that was I was working for my dad at first. He was an entrepreneur. He used to import Egyptian arts and crafts from Egypt. And then in New York City, where I grew up, they had all of these like flea markets. And I was like a little salesperson. And then he eventually like graduated from that and had like a little storefront. And so I remember my siblings and I just spending time at the time it was the family business. He called it Little Egypt Corporation. And we did that until, unfortunately, at the time he was like diagnosed with cancer and passed away. But my siblings and I then took up jobs selling candy. So we had the candy entrepreneur like story in the background. I took on odd jobs, like I worked in a school food kitchen for a summer. I then would cater for a little while, so I did the catering stuff. And that got me in the hospitality realm, which later on led to my path at the hotel school at Cornell. But I did all sorts of jobs in my teens. I worked as like a realtor for a summer. I volunteered on a political campaign. I worked as a lifeguard. I was a swim instructor. And so I think the one consistent theme was that I was working since a really young age. And then from there, becoming a CEO, I don't know at what point you actually become a CEO, but I decided I was going to start an organization to give back. And they asked me what my title was, and I guess when you're starting, you're a CEO. But I was the CEO of a one-person company for a very long time.
That's amazing. And I want to start off by saying I'm sorry for your loss. And you've had a lot of experience through many different jobs, which is absolutely really, really cool. And I like that because I think it's so important to just try different things when you're young. And of course, you always had that entrepreneurship bug inside you. And it's super cool, right, to call yourself the CEO. So was that always the plan to become a CEO or?
No, actually, it wasn't. And watching my dad and in action and just seeing the ups and downs of all of it, it is. I remember thinking as a child, like, I don't want that. Like let me go and be a number two or work my way up the corporate ladder, get that stability, and just be a high performer within an organization. So that was my initial thinking. And when my father passed away, like we were basically poor. And when you grow up poor, you want to be rich. And so my thought was I was going to be rich, and I had mentors and older friends who were like, listen, you're smart, you're hardworking, like go work on Wall Street. And so my plan was to go and work on Wall Street, and actually did my internships at Goldman Sachs and BlackRock. And I turned down my offer when I graduated. And so people thought I was crazy. But it wasn't because I wanted to be a CEO. It was because I got so passionate and committed to this idea. And when I understood the actual problem and the lack of support in the area, like that just drove me. And, people talk about purpose and having conviction. And I felt like God had put me on this earth to do the work that I was doing in education. And once I got to that realization, there was no turning back. And so I guess I became CEO by default, but it was the work itself that inspired me to move in this direction.
Mm-hmm. And thinking back to Cornell and Columbia a little bit, what's maybe a myth about success you believed in college and what was that actual reality?
Well, it depends on how you define success. So give me a definition for it first.
I would say success, in my version, is just to live out your purpose, right? Something that makes you happy while, of course, making money, impacting others, which, of course, you're doing at the same time. So allowing you to live out your purpose. So what was maybe a myth about success that you thought that, you led to learn about the actual reality?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your version of it, right? Saying purpose. I always think about like when I was younger, success for me was make a ton of money, like buy a house, have a nice car, and have like a hot girlfriend, right? Or wife one day. And so that it was as superficial as that. And that's how I thought about it. And that's what I was working towards. But, that's empty. And where does that really come from? And was that my definition or someone else's definition? And oftentimes, like we fail to think about what success looks like, but at its core, it's setting a goal or a target and then achieving it. And if we know what the thought behind is that goal, that can change how we ultimately feel about it. And so I think what we really need to be thinking about is how do I set the right targets for myself and then achieve those things, because that's how I want to measure whether or not I'm successful. And I got to a point really early on in my life where I was lucky enough to have a class that forced us to all really look at our values and be a lot more introspective about the things that we care about. Because if we spent our time and energy working on things that we cared about, then we'd have a better outcome and more happiness. And so some of the myths I'll give you, like if you work really, really hard all the time, that everything is going to work out. Like that is not true, unfortunately. Like spending your time on the right things matters. That doesn't mean you won't work really hard, but there's no like guarantee that if you work a ton of hours that you're going to have success in your life. So I would say that was one myth. I think the other one for a lot of like young folks, there was a fear factor when I was graduating around whether or not I should take this job or I should pursue this entrepreneurial life. And I had mentors in my life who were saying like, don't turn this opportunity down. Things like this only come around once in a lifetime. And there's some truth to that. Like I remember my BlackRock like offer in general. I think my internship that summer, there was 100 interns. They said 10,000 people applied, and they only made offers to 40 of them. And so, you can do the math on that. There's a very small percentage of people who get a full-time offer after that. But when I turned down the offers, there were other job offers that came after, even though I had decided I wasn't going to do it anymore. And what I learned in that moment is that if you're hardworking and smart, there's always going to be a job opportunity out there for you. And so don't fret around that and like panic. And then, like pushing on that side, I would just say like lean into that. You can definitely take a lot more risk when you're younger than you can when you're older. And that one isn't a myth, unfortunately. And I'm lucky I got that side of the equation right.
Yeah. Let's stay in college for a second. And, of course, you've had a lot of success through your career, Kareem, but what's one thing that you wish someone had told you back in college, being at Cornell and Columbia, that you think would have set you up for, quicker success? What's that one thing that comes to mind?
I think how you like measure your success like really matters, and who it matters to. I wish someone had told me that. Like I made the right decision in hindsight, but I'll give you like a perfect example. I had a mentor at the time when I was getting ready to graduate who was telling me like, I absolutely should take this job offer. And I remember looking at his life, and he was like really wealthy, but he wasn't really happy. And one of the things I looked back to in hindsight was, and I know this from being a leader, right? When everything is going well, everyone and their mother is there. When everything is going wrong, it feels like no one is there and you're there by yourself. And now, whether or not that's true, it doesn't matter. In your head, that's the perception of what's going on. And so when I was making my decision my senior year, the only thing I cared about was that 5 or 10 years down the line, if I looked back, that I wanted to make sure that the person who made that decision would be standing right there with me. Whether or not I made the right decision or the wrong decision, it didn't matter, right? What matters is that the person who made that decision was there. And the only way you can kind of guarantee that is for you to own that decision, right? Because I could have made a decision and gone and worked on Wall Street and been completely unhappy, or I could have decided to go and do this and failed so miserably that I'd be unhappy. And I think what mattered more to me was that the person who made the decision would be there and be accountable. Because again, if everything goes well and right, everyone is there. If things don't go well, right, you might be the only one there. And so are you comfortable with the decision that you're going to make? And, speaking about like another like myth or reality is that no one really knows what the right answer is, and no one tells you
Mm.
that. And so a lot of times when you're in college, you're looking for advice for someone to give you the right answer. That's the whole reason behind why you're seeking it out. If someone told me earlier that like no one actually really knows and no one knows the right answer, I think it would have changed the way I thought about it as well.
Yeah, I love that. And, you could figure out the answer by taking action, right? Instead of just thinking or talk about it, start doing. And that's, something I definitely agree with. So let's look towards a little bit about your early career. So what's one major obstacle that you face early on, maybe just graduating college, and how'd you overcome that moment?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is you don't actually know anything when you graduate college. And I don't know that at any point in your business career, when you're starting a new company, that you know exactly what to do. But I didn't have experience. And that is like, I don't want to say it's underrated when you're coming out of college, but it really does matter. And it's not that you're smarter or less smart than someone else, but there's pattern recognition that you get over time. And I didn't have that early on. I think the way I overcame that was I used my age and my like I guess my risk-taking nature to my advantage, and I sought out help. I had a mentor my senior year of college ask me like why I made it out. He was like, "What was it about you? Like, how did you get out of the inner city? And why isn't it that more kids like you don't get out?" And at the time, my initial instinct was, well, there's not enough opportunities. And if you're in business, you know this, you don't jump on every single opportunity that you get, right? Not every single opportunity is a good opportunity. You kind of wait for the right ones. Well, what happens if you don't have that many opportunities and you miss the few that come by? And I kind of thought that like that was my image of what was happening in the inner city is there weren't that many opportunities, so if kids passed up on the few that they got, there weren't any others. And there's some truth to that, but that wasn't the only thing that made me different. I think the biggest
Yeah.
differentiator was my, I guess, lack of fear and hesitation around asking for help. And it's uncomfortable, it doesn't make you feel good. You're asking someone for something that you might not be able to ever give them back. You don't want to feel like you owe someone something. And I remember telling myself that all of this help that I'm going to ask for isn't for me. It's for this bigger purpose, right? It's for this community that I care about. It's for my family. And one day, because of that help, I'm going to be in a much better place. I'm going to be able to help so many other people. And once I internalized that, it made it a lot easier. And so I used my, like, I guess, my naivete to my advantage, and I reached out to really successful entrepreneurs, really successful executives and CEOs, and people took those meetings for me, thankfully. Like my alumni network at Cornell was really helpful because it opened up doors for me to people I would not otherwise have access to. Now, would that same approach work 15 years later? Not as much, right? So I would definitely say like take advantage of the fact that you're younger when you're doing it and that you don't actually know, and humble yourself enough to recognize that, and you'll get a lot of people who do want to help you out and see you be successful.
Yeah, let's dive a little deeper into that. I love that. So I know you mentioned fear a couple times, maybe that fear of trying, that fear of failure. Can you elaborate on maybe how that's so important to take that risk, especially when you're young?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have a family, you don't really have a lot that you could lose. You think you have a lot more than you actually do. Your reputation, your ego, maybe those things, but you can build back from all of those. And they say, like, right, courage, I think they say this time and time again, it's not the absence of fear, right? I've already cited it multiple times. It's like moving forward despite it, right? And so in those moments, like, you want to be courageous, you want to take that risk. And for me, I remember getting to a point where I said, okay, listen, I'm going to turn down this full time offer. And like worst case scenario, I'm gonna go and everything will fail, and I'll have a very compelling story for business school. So that was my like plan B if everything failed. But at the
Yeah.
same time, if everything worked out, we'd make a couple of like newspapers, and people would want to support us, and we'd be serving a lot more students and changing the world for the better at the time. And I
Yeah.
bet that that was a possibility, and there was. It may have been really, really small in hindsight, but it was there. And you're never going to know unless you take that risk whether or not it's the right thing. Now, people ask me today, like, would I do it all over again? You know, like, would I have started over? And I don't know that I would start over at this age the same way. Like, when I was in school, I had like only one goal, right? To graduate. And so anything else that I did outside of that was like gravy. So if I failed at 10 other things, it wouldn't even matter. No one would ever care. So take that risk while you can. And that's what I did. And I built a foundation for myself before I graduated, so I wasn't starting from scratch.
Yeah. And being in many different fields, was there a moment or decision that dramatically changed your career path, maybe to become the CEO and founder of Practice?
I think I'd say like there was a defining moment.
Mm.
So I graduated college. We made the New York Times, USA Today. I had the chance to meet President Bill Clinton. I raised $2.5 million in philanthropy in the 2 years after from people I had no business meeting. Then we got challenged to add an earned income model where schools could pay us for our services. And again, like we started to succeed with that, and the organization was getting more traction. We were growing. Now schools were paying us for our service. And I think it was like 2017, right? I switched the legal structure of the company in 2016. Now 2017, we're growing. And we almost ran out of cash. Like we got to a point where I nearly bankrupted the business, not because we weren't generating revenue, but because we couldn't collect cash fast enough. And in that moment, every like preconceived notion that I had about whether or not I'd be doing this forever, whether or not I was the right person to be doing this, came into question. Right? Was I operating in the right way? Was I leading in the right way? Was I making the right decisions? You know, like what mistakes did I make that I could have undone? What could I have done differently? And I remember one of the analogies I use and I share with people like often is that I felt like I was in the middle of the ocean. I was in a rowboat and it was pitch black. There was no light in any direction, but I knew if I stopped rowing, the boat would sink and it would be over. And
Yeah.
I didn't care about anything else. Like I didn't care about being CEO. I didn't care about running this business forever, even though before I used to think I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. The only thing that mattered to me in that moment was the company's like existence because of the purpose that we had. And I remember sharing, like even just sitting there and thinking about like all of the people whose lives we'd impacted already, the college students who had put this on their resume and this not existing for them. You know, the opportunities that we had created for kids growing up just like me and not having this organization around for them later or for other kids in their community to benefit from. And it completely shifted how I thought about the work. And I remember making a commitment to myself in that moment that when we get to the point in time where I'm no longer the right person to be doing this work, that I would step aside and I'd play a different role. So it has never been about me, but that moment made it extra clear to me that it wasn't going to be about me and it was going to be about the impact that we were having. And I'd say that was a pretty like big defining moment for me. And it didn't mean that I was going to step aside. It didn't mean that I was going to walk away. It meant that I was going to elevate and challenge myself even more, right? I was going to push
Yeah.
myself to learn faster. I was going to push myself to seek out the right support, the right mentorship, put the right structure around the organization because I don't want to be unseated and I really do care about this. But it isn't at the
Yeah.
end of the day about me.
Yeah, that's so good. And I want to hear your thoughts on, me just graduating college about 2 months ago. What do you personally think the biggest challenge that students face today?
Well, congratulations. It's a big deal. I still tell people like that was the most like proud moment of my life was graduate, and one of the
Hmm.
biggest accomplishments of my life was graduating college. So hopefully you celebrate it. I know for me, I was already thinking about the next thing, but take a moment to just take that in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the age of AI right now, right? And if it wasn't AI, it'd be something else. So I would ultimately say like present yourself as a quick learner, continue to adapt and change. Like those things are cliche and they're obvious, but like don't be afraid to ask for help as you're going through and navigating it. Biggest like challenge you're going to face right now is the like it's not the best time in the world to graduate compared to other periods where if you're looking for a job, a traditional job opportunity like is going to be there. By another token, though, like for the first time in our like lifetime, anyone anywhere in the world could create something at significant scale without a shit ton of investment like you needed before. If you can
Yeah.
harness the power of AI. And I always talk about these revolutions, right? The internet in the early 2000s made it possible for anyone anywhere in the world to be able to get an education, right? A high quality education at that, relative to the ones that you're getting in these universities. That doesn't mean everyone did get a high quality education. And
Yeah.
we're seeing that same phenomenon now, right? For the first time in our history, in our lifetime, like anyone anywhere in the world can like use AI to build and develop a company in a way that you couldn't before. So you can create something that you couldn't. But the reality is that not everyone will. And so
Yeah.
from that like side, it's also equally as exciting if you have the energy, the know-how, and everything else that you're willing to commit yourself to harnessing this technology to do what people before you couldn't do. You can fill
Mhm.
so many skill and knowledge gaps, even experience gaps, if you can use AI correctly now.
Yeah. Yeah. So But yeah, I definitely could see, AI pick it up, and I mean, we're on social media constantly. We see what's happening with AI. So, that's really good for college students to know whether they're in college or just graduated. So we're going to do an activity type of thing now. So it's going to be pick a question game. So I'm going to have you pick a number 1 through 5, and I have 5 questions right here, and you won't know the question until you choose. So pick a number 1 through 5, Kareem, and I'll let you know what question you selected.
Number 2.
One thing college didn't prepare for you.
One thing college didn't prepare for me.
Yep. Or
One
didn't
thing.
prepare you for. Sorry.
Oh, one thing college did not prepare me for.
Yep.
Man, I learned so much in college. What did it prepare me for? I mean, it didn't prepare me to run a business, and I think that I don't know that it ever will for anyone until you're actually in it. But to be an entrepreneur today and to feel like college didn't do that for me, I think is pretty big.
Yeah. Okay. And now we're going to be doing like a lightning round type of thing. So let's get the energy going here. I'm going to ask you 6 questions. I want you to answer each sentence or each question in less than, 20, 30 seconds. All right?
All right, go
Let's
for it.
do it.
Let's see.
First question, Kareem, is your favorite college class?
Organizational behavior. It was a class on career planning in the hospitality industry. That was the values class I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Your go-to coffee order?
Black Americano, plain.
Okay. Your best book or podcast recommendation?
I've started to listen to All In. I think it's like pretty balanced, good perspective. It's a podcast. And a book, I'd say the Essays of Warren Buffett.
Okay. Best productivity hack?
Go to sleep early. I mean, I'm in bed by 7:40 most nights.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Dream mentor, could be dead or alive?
Probably John D. Rockefeller.
Okay. And what's something you do every day that helps you stay grounded?
My gratitude meditation practice easily.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's wrap it up with these next couple questions here. What are 3 traits, habits, or skills that helped you go from a student to a successful CEO?
I think the curiosity piece, just in anything. I think the ability to learn quickly. So once you're curious, can you actually like learn quickly after that? And then my work ethic. So just being willing to put in the work, regardless of what it is, big task, small task, long time commitment, short time commitment.
And lastly, if students only could remember 10 seconds of this interview, what should it be?
And go all in on AI.
I love that. Yeah, that's good, Kareem. And, thank you so much for joining us. And thanks to everyone who's watching. If something resonated with you today, share it with a friend or mentor. These conversations are meant to inspire action and change. We'll see you next time on the CEO Speaker Series. Thank you again, Kareem.
Of course, pleasure's all mine. Good luck.